Hello everybody, this is Jason from STEM Nerds. In today's video, we are going to be talking about a very important protozoal infection, and that is called Leishmania. Leishmania is found in countries throughout the equator in both South America and the New World and across Africa and some parts of the Middle East, and it even creeps into parts of Europe and parts of the United States. This is a very interesting little organism because it's actually one of the smallest known eukaryotic single-celled organisms on the face of the earth. Leishmania is a parasite, and because of that, it really has a reduction in the number of eukaryotic organelles that it possesses, and it needs eukaryotic organisms, other cells, in order to replicate. There's two stages of Leishmania. One is a promastigote stage or form, and that is usually what's found in their vector, the sandfly. And the amastigote stage is found in mammals, and that is usually going to be found inside of macrophages. And macrophages are the very cells that are responsible for clearing this infection as part of the innate immune system. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. Promastigotes, for the most part, are going to use amino acids like proline and alanine as a carbon and energy source, where the amastigotes, they're going to rely a lot more on glucose and fatty acids for their energy. All right, so where is Leishmania found? What is it? Well, there's actually three different potential outcomes for leishmaniasis. That's the disease caused by the Leishmania parasite. The visceral leishmaniasis is caused by L. donovani, L. infantum, and L. shigazi. This is by far of the three the most problematic and the most life-threatening. According to the World Health Organization, this can be deadly to up to 95% of untreated cases, and it's going to be marked by bouts of fever and weight loss, enlarged spleen, otherwise known as splenomegaly, can be enlarged liver. Certainly anemia, because as the parasite releases from the red blood cells, it's lysing red blood cells. There are somewhere around 50 to 100,000 new cases of visceral leishmaniasis that occur worldwide every year. The cutaneous leishmaniasis is often caused by L. tropica, L. major, and L. mexicana. This is a less deadly form of the disease, and cutaneous means that it's usually going to be contained within the skin, and so it's going to cause skin lesions and some ulceration and exposed parts of the body. It may leave a scar, and sometimes there's going to be, if it's a scar in a place that's very visible, that can be very debilitating to the people who have it. And about 95% of the cutaneous leishmaniasis cases occur in the Americas, and the Mediterranean, and in the Middle East, and in Central Asia. It's thought that there's around 600,000 to 1 million new cases that occur of the cutaneous type worldwide. Mucocutaneous leishmaniasis is the third type, and that is usually going to be infections of the mucous membranes, particularly of the nose, mouth, and throat. About 90% of those cases are going to occur in Bolivia, Brazil, Ethiopia, and Peru. All right, so let's talk a little bit about how leishmaniasis does what it does. Well, first thing, we're going to start with the sandfly. This is a phlebotomine sandfly, so it's a special type of insect that's going to carry this organism and have the potential to transfer it to mammals. And in our case, particularly, we're worried about humans. So the sandfly becomes infected when it bites a host and ingest the macrophages that were in the blood. Again, that innate immune system cell, because the amastigotes will be found inside those macrophages. Once inside the sandfly's midgut, that's when the macrophages are going to release the amastigotes, and there they're going to transform into promastigotes, where they are going to become flagellated and motile. They're going to undergo binary fission and migrate to the proboscis, which is the mouth parts of the sandfly. So how do humans and other mammals get infected when the sandfly bites a mammal or a human being? As we talked about with malaria, the sandfly is going to inject a local anesthetic and an anticoagulant to make sure that it can continue to get its meal. When it does that, it's also injecting the promastigotes into the organism. What happens then is the promastigotes are then going to be taken in by the macrophages, which are designed to destroy and kill foreign invaders, like this particular infectious agent. However, inside the macrophage, The Leishmania loses its flagella and then becomes once again an amastogote. They multiply via binary fission inside the host cell until it ruptures, and we get a whole bunch of new amastogotes that are going to continue to infect other cells, particularly the macrophages, as they try to bring them in. They can also be found in the liver and the spleen and the bone marrow and the skin. It depends really on the species of Leishmania. Now, it's important to note that our immune system can and does clear this organism depending, again, on the type of leishmaniasis that's contracted. The first thing that's going to happen is, as we've mentioned already, the macrophages and dendritic cells and neutrophils, these cells of the innate immune system will recognize the Leishmania when it gets into the body. The problem is when the promastogotes enter the macrophages, they have the opportunity to grow and divide there. Now, if you have macrophages that are activated, they do a better job of destroying the amastogotes before they have a chance to replicate inside of their own cell. The immune system also has what's known as a complement system. These are proteins that can potentially allow for greater uptake of the parasite into the innate immune system cells where they can be destroyed. And these complement proteins can also cause cell lysis of the amastogotes and promastogotes, and that can lead to those organisms no longer causing an infection. Later on, the adaptive immune system can be of tremendous help in both the form of T helper cells and cytotoxic T cells that can produce antibodies that could potentially neutralize the infection. So how is Leishmania treated? Again, if it is cutaneous leishmaniasis, that will sometimes go away on its own. Keep in mind with the cutaneous leishmaniasis, it leaves a rather large sore and an open wound on the body. And so that can lead to other infections like MRSA and other types of wound infections. People who are HIV positive have a much more difficult time clearing this infection because their immune system is already compromised, and there is a definite incidence of co-infection between the two. And there are also medications that are used to treat leishmaniasis. The pentavalent antimonials work very well. Miltefosine also works well. There may also be supportive care, nutritional support, management of anemia, and the treatment of any secondary infections are going to be extremely important for the cutaneous types. So how do you prevent leishmaniasis? Again, this is caused by the sandfly, and so a lot of what we're going to do for prevention is going to be centered around making sure the sandfly can't find its human host or mammalian host. And so we're trying to control the vector through insecticide spraying, insecticide-treated bed nets, environmental management. So we want to clear a lot of that underbrush that are in forests where the sandfly is most likely to exist. From a personal perspective, if you're going to be in areas where leishmaniasis is endemic, make sure you're wearing long sleeves, long pants, using bed nets. Again, we're trying to reduce the likelihood that a sandfly bites, and especially from dusk to dawn when they are most active. We're also trying to reduce the reservoir control because Leishmania doesn't only infect human beings, they can infect dogs. And so if there are stray dogs in a population, trying to reduce their populations, as well as excessive rodent populations. Early diagnosis and prompt treatment is super important because the faster you can treat human beings, the less likely they are to be bitten by sandflies and those sandflies carrying it to the next person. So that is an overview of leishmaniasis. As always, thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next time.